about to hear something that could change the way you see the WNBA forever, because in a single, unfiltered moment, Sophie Cunningham didn't just speak her mind, she blew apart a decades-old system that's been quietly controlling the league's stories from the shadows. One casual podcast chat about DeWanna Bonner's messy exit from Indiana turned into a live grenade that's now rolling through the entire sports media world. Sophie didn't go through ESPN, The Athletic, or any of the old-school gatekeepers who've been deciding for years what fans get to hear. She went straight to the people, millions of them with no script, no filter, and no permission. And what she revealed has the traditional media scrambling, because Sophie just proved WNBA players can take control of their own narratives, and once that door is open, there's no shutting it again. The first crack in the system didn't come from a press release or a carefully planted leak. It came straight from Sophie Cunningham's own voice on her podcast, Show Me Something. No corporate script, no media filter, just Sophie talking about Bonner like she actually knew her, because she did. She painted the picture. Bonner was one of her vets back in Phoenix, a Hall of Famer who could score from anywhere, someone any team would grab in a heartbeat. So when she landed in Indiana, everyone thought it was a win, but behind the scenes, Sophie says she wasn't happy. And here's the thing, Sophie stayed neutral publicly because she genuinely wanted Bonner to be happy, especially toward the end of her career. But then came the part that shook fans, Sophie revealed. Bonner left without even sending a private message to teammates, no explanation, not even a quick good luck. Sophie called it what it was, unprofessional, and the moment those words hit the mic, the conversation went from polite to nuclear. This wasn't gossip from an outsider. This was someone in the room, telling it like it happened, and it was about to blow the WNBA media's control wide open. That moment, the exact second Sophie dropped that detail, was like a live detonation in the middle of the WNBA's tightly controlled media bubble. She didn't leak it to ESPN, she didn't whisper it to The Athletic, she didn't even throw a cryptic hint on Instagram. She just sat across from her co-host, hit record, and delivered pure, unfiltered truth straight to the audience. No editor to water it down, no PR department to soften the edges, no corporate agenda in sight. And that's the nightmare scenario for the old guard, because for years, any story about locker room drama or teammate friction would have been funneled through beat reporters who would clean it up with polished language and political framing. Sophie skipped that entire machine and told it better than any journalist could, because she was there, she lived it, and she wasn't asking anyone's permission to speak. It was the kind of direct hit the media system never saw coming, and they had no defense. And here's where it gets even more explosive. Sophie's podcast isn't just some small, independent side project she's doing for fun. It's backed and distributed by The Volume, Colin Cowherd's massive sports media empire. That's the first real bridge between WNBA player-driven content and mainstream sports media infrastructure. And make no mistake, they didn't sign Sophie out of charity or to tick a diversity box. They signed her because they saw exactly what ESPN and the old school basketball outlets missed, that unfiltered, authentic player voices can crush traditional coverage in engagement, reach, and influence. While legacy networks were treating WNBA coverage like a side note, Cowherd's team saw a business opportunity worth betting big on. That deal proved something game-changing. WNBA players don't need WNBA-specific media to make an impact anymore. They can plug straight into the mainstream sports entertainment machine, speak directly to millions, and bypass the gatekeepers entirely. And now, those gatekeepers are scrambling to figure out how to keep their grip before it slips away for good. And the panic is already spreading. Multiple insiders are leaking that major sports media companies are now rushing to lock WNBA players into exclusive podcast and content deals. Why? Because Sophie just proved the market for raw, unfiltered player voices is huge, and audiences will pick that every single time over a polished, corporate-safe interview. But here's why Sophie's approach is even more dangerous for the establishment. She's not just telling her own story, she's breaking the unwritten rule that you never call out another player, especially a veteran, in public. For years, WNBA media has lived by this silent agreement. Protect the sisterhood, don't hand fans anything that could turn toxic, and never criticize one of your own. Sophie looked straight at that rulebook and tossed it in the trash. She told the Bonner story because it was the truth, not because it was safe. And that's exactly the kind of authenticity new fans have been starving for. And in one fiery moment, she turned the league's most guarded taboo into a headline that nobody could ignore. And then came the part that lit the fan base on fire. Sophie's passionate, no-holds-barred defense of Caitlin Clark. While the old-school media danced around with carefully worded takes about growing pains and balancing the spotlight, Sophie went straight for the jugular, calling anyone who says Clark isn't the face of the league dumb as hell, and she meant every single word. She wasn't just defending a teammate, she was locking eyes with the largest, loudest segment of the WNBA's new audience and speaking their language without apology. She knew exactly who she was talking to, and she didn't water it down to appease the traditionalists. That's the kind of direct connection that builds an army of loyal supporters overnight, and her surging social media numbers prove it. By refusing to play the corporate soundbite game, Sophie didn't just win fans, she made the middlemen irrelevant. Fans didn't need a journalist to explain what she meant. She said it, they got it, and they loved her more for it. That's when the real nightmare for traditional sports media came into focus. If players like Sophie can speak directly to millions, build their own loyal audiences, and control their own narratives without needing the press, then what exactly are journalists bringing to the table? For decades, the entire system ran on controlled access reporters, had the relationships, the press passes, the platforms players couldn't get on their own. But Sophie just proved that access was never the real power. The audience was, and now she owns hers. Even more dangerous for the old guard, fans are starting to expect that same level of honesty from every player. Those polished, PR-approved answers that used to be the norm, now they look fake, corporate, and out of touch. And you can feel the shift happening in real time. Other players are watching Sophie's engagement numbers, looking at her freedom, and asking themselves why they're still letting someone else decide how their story gets told. And here's the prediction that's already making legacy media execs lose sleep within the next 6 months. You're going to see at least 3 to 5 big-name WNBA players launch their own shows following Sophie's exact playbook. They've seen the proof of concept work, they've seen how the audience responds, and they've seen the power that comes with owning your own narrative. That's why the big sports media companies are suddenly throwing money at NBA and WNBA players for exclusive deals, not out of generosity, but out of fear. They know once these athletes realize they don't need the old system at all, the gatekeeping era is over. And here's the kicker. Sophie didn't just prove the model works for stars. She proved it works for any player with personality, authenticity, and the guts to speak unfiltered truth. That levels the playing field in a way the establishment never wanted, because it means media power is no longer tied to stat sheets, it's tied to connection. And once players see that, there's no going back. And that's the part the old system was never built to handle, the fact that a player's media power can now exist completely independent of their performance on the court. Sophie has built a platform that would still thrive even if she never scored another point, because her influence isn't tied to the box score, it's tied to her voice, her personality, and her connection with fans. That's a complete reversal of how sports media leverage used to work, where only the superstars had real pull. Now, every player in the league is looking at her blueprint and realizing they don't have to wait for the media to hand them relevance, they can create it themselves. The Bonner controversy may have been the spark, but the fire is Sophie proving that authenticity, even when it stirs the pot, builds deeper loyalty than any polished, corporate-safe answer ever could. And now that the wall between athletes and audiences has been ripped down, there's no putting it back up. Sophie Cunningham didn't just speak her mind, she ripped the mask off a decades-old media system that's been controlling WNBA narratives from the shadows. In one raw, unfiltered conversation, she bypassed ESPN, The Athletic, and every gatekeeper, speaking directly to millions of fans with no script, no filter, and no permission. And in doing so, she proved players don't need the middlemen. They can own their stories, their image, and their connection with fans entirely on their own terms. Now the panic is setting in. Other WNBA players are watching, realizing they can skip the old system, build their own platforms, and connect directly with audiences hungry for authenticity. The corporate spin, the safe, rehearsed sound bites, fans aren't buying it anymore. They want the fire, the honesty, the moments that feel real, and Sophie just showed exactly how to deliver it. This isn't the start of a revolution, it's already here. The gatekeepers are losing their grip, and the players, bold enough to take control, are about to change the game forever. The only question now is who's next.